chamber underground. Chapter 6 of the story of the Giantslayer Endeavor. The world record run to accomplish and play through and fully document the largest amount of material ever played through in 6 months in the history of tabletop role-playing, and most notably in the history of the world's oldest fantasy role-playing game. This iteration being Pathfinder 1E. And here we were, headed to Marathon 6. You've heard the story. 5 of these, 5 marathons, back to back, 1 month apart. And it was getting, to say heavy, it was yeah, well beyond that. Well beyond heavy. We can't really even describe at this point what this thing had done to our personal lives, our professional lives. And yet, as we were setting up for part 6, there was a sense of nostalgia. I remember setting up slowly for this one. We played it at Fort Rannoch here. We wanted to be together at HQ for the last time. And also because when we knew, I guess what we knew coming into this was that we wouldn't see each other for a while after this one. No 2 rosters are the same, and no 2 projects are the same, obviously, but no 2 rosters are the same. We have an active membership of, about sometimes 10 to 12 members. I think at this point right now it's up around 12 to 15, but you can be active in playing projects, and you can play cameos and live NPCs and things like that, but it's very rare to ever see even 3 out of our core 4 players that play every single day of every marathon in a project. That's what we call the core 4. They do not overlap. There has never been a project with the same exact core 4. It just doesn't happen. And so we knew that we wouldn't see each other. That's something that as you're setting up for the final volume, you don't realize how long it might be. It could be years. It's just the way it goes. And that's on your mind. We've been doing this a long time, and so you know that this is sort of like the ending in real life for a lot of things, and we've all shared this journey together. We've been through the pain of one of us driving 8 hours each way coming down from Maine. One of us in the fresh stages of a divorce that began during the project. One of us who had trouble at his job because of how many days off he was taking in the project. And eventually his work performance suffered, and he would actually lose his job in one of the next projects to come. And we laugh about it now years later, because he ended up getting a much better job. But that's, hey, come on, that's just Desna at work there, right? So a lot of fate and luck. Thank you. But you don't want to have to rely on the goddess of luck to come through for you. And in his case, he got lucky there. But I really couldn't count the number of jobs over the years that have gotten damaged up. I mean, oh man, some crazy stories about barely hanging on to employment if you're part of the order. But that's because the most important thing is the play, right? I mean, we have a saying in the order. And yeah, I'm going there. The saying is, if you aren't single, you soon will be. And that's what it is to be a member, guys. That's it right there. Yep. OAD will take a level of commitment you will not find anywhere else. And it's all about the play. So let's get to it. We're facing something logistically here with the size of the maps in part 6. 15 foot squares when you're looking at the map of a cloud giant castle. Well, I talked about how crazy it was to draw the 10-foot squares. The map was just massive in part 4. Part 5 had big maps too. Part 4 are giant ones. And then all of a sudden, now we're in part 6. This cloud castle, you really couldn't draw some of these maps. There was no way to do it. So what we did was we played using as much gridless sort of a gridless approach as we could, right? Where we didn't have to set up if we could avoid it. If it's a battle, obviously you got to do it. And so we set up individual rooms, never having drawn out the entire level of the castle. It would have taken simply too much space, not only in the room you were playing in, but also map wise and having to connect multiple Mondo mats and everything. It's just not meant to be drawn out, I don't think. So I think the largest battle we put together was maybe the opening one, where we were in a crater and we decided to use the entire living room as the crater and set up towers in the corners and so forth. And we were playing it out like inches wise across the floor and everything with a yardstick and trying to show where creatures were. And it was just so much space to have to use, and monsters were so far apart. And that was actually one of the problems with that encounter. Actually, it was just I think that it wasn't designed to be, you know, walked across essentially, and we were trying to do that for a little bit there, and then eventually had to resort to faster methods of getting around because it was just too much area. And once you got up into the castle, it was like, all right, well, we're not going to draw this thing, and we want to be able to throw up rooms really quickly and just throw them onto the map. So what we're going to do is we'll use crossbows and catapults, that old game from the 80s. And now, of course, it's made a little comeback here. But yeah, the old game from the 80s, we had a bunch of these little walls lying around. So we ended up using those. And I would either draw out the borders of the room, or we would just I would build the border real quick with it. And we could quickly just put down a Chessex Mondo mat or a Chessex standard, 36 by 48 mat, and then all of a sudden have walls. And if we needed to go higher to provide sort of like a better three-dimensional look at it, we could. But it worked. It worked, and we were able to build rooms very quickly throughout the adventure, because one of the problems you face when you get to part 6 of an AP is that the levels, you're so high level, the combats are so, they just are so grindy, and we like that. Actually, I'm not saying grindy in a bad way. I really enjoy high level play, whether it's 2E or 1E. Always enjoyed it. I love the higher level spells. I love the hard hits. Crow dropped a 194 damage single hit, which was just, you're going, wow. I mean, we're trying to top 2. We never saw it, but you just, wow, what the heck? Like 194. You watch this scale across the course of a character's career. It's just incredible to see. And Zadim threw down in a single round the Slayer 316 damage. Just wild numbers and awesome combats, lots of cloud giants. We knew we would need time for this one. Luckily, we never found out what happened if we ended up needing more time, because they're going to reach an untimely end to this marathon. But yeah, I think that, in the end, this was a good way to play it, and I'd recommend it for anybody who was trying to take on this adventure, because it is hard to deal with maps that size, and it's something that we had to make up. We were playing this way out in advance, okay? So we had this module, or this volume, well before it came out, and I was able to look at this thing and take, a glance through all the maps and kind of pore over it for a while and just decide, all right, how do I want to even approach something this large, the magnitude of this adventure. I'm trying to think of anything that rivals it. No, definitely. And that's why you should play it. Just go play this, because if you want one of those experiences that's different from other adventures out there, and I'm saying this having just far too many of the same adventures over and over early on in my career as a GM, this one is one of those unique ones you're going to get only once. And I've never been to a cloud castle since Adventure Pack 1 in this thing goes back maybe like 1990 or something like that. And it was, a 6-page thing. I'd love to say 6 pages, like 4 pages of actual cloud castle material. This is an entire volume of just, climbing through this thing. You're going to love it. It's awesome. So go check it out if you haven't already. Shadow of the Storm Tyrant. And at the end, of course, you will face the Storm Tyrant. And they all knew this battle was coming. In fact, it's really the only battle you want to hear about, because that's why everybody likes to ask us about Giantslayer is what happened at the end, what happened when you TPK'd. We gave as much description as we could in the small word count we had on the blog report, but the rest of it would be in our fully documented PDF of it. And honestly, also, we just like to kind of tell the story, so I will. But yeah, this ended sadly, and it was a great marathon. It really was. We had fun. We had the fog machines rolling, and we ordered sushi in the middle of it. Had a great. I remember a fan sent us edible arrangements. So we had a great thing to kind of pick at along the way for food, and on one of the days, and we just a lot of fun. It really was a great closeout. That I think that there was a feeling going into the final battle that we didn't have an answer. There just wasn't. I watched the players discuss this. I watched the looks on their faces from the early part of Volume 6, and they just didn't have an answer. There wasn't a way to face the Storm Tyrant. If the Storm Tyrant was on, if he was on his dragon, that was it. They really didn't have any way. They tried talking about it a few times, and obviously they talked about it a lot at breaks. It's a common thing to do when we sit on the patio and eat, which is, this marathon had short ones, and they used them to discuss strategy, but no one had an answer. They had months building up to this thing, knowing it was a storm giant, knowing he rode a dragon, and laughing about how they had no answer for it. They definitely had a couple of ideas, I guess, of what they would do if he was not mounted, but everyone thought, well, why wouldn't he be, right? And Adam's definitely going to just have him get on that stupid dragon right away if he can, and that's exactly what I did, of course. So yeah, it played out sadly a lot like we thought it would. They encountered him, and that was it. He got on the dragon. They had no answer. They started to get mauled up pretty quick, and they decided to run deeper into the castle. I actually liked this plan. So they decided, let's run deeper into the castle and just start messing with things in the castle. He's going to have to get off the dragon and come into the castle and come get us. Maybe if we break enough stuff in here and make enough of a mess, he'll chase us, because otherwise he's not going to get off that dragon, and he has control of the outside of the castle. And there's lots of ways he can attack you at different points. Once you set off the final encounter, it's sort of like at that point a running encounter that has other bosses joining, or mini bosses, I should say, and just other NPCs you've encountered that are in an active kind of wandering the castle. And the whole castle goes on to full alert, searching for you and everything. So once they set it into motion, it became a running battle that ended up at a naga, like you saw on the Paizo blog report. But it was really just this thing where it was invisible, so it gets the surprise round and fires off prismatic spray. Then the gaze starts rocking, and so it's going to be able to charm people. And then you have Wall of Force, and it can separate players. Like whenever they're lined up in a hallway, it's a really nasty trick you can do where you can, separate players from each other that way. And so it's just, it's a nasty battle. And the Naga's like this incredible sorcerer with 7 level spells. And, the gaze is powerful. It charmed 2 people, actually. It charmed Olak and it charmed Zadim. And I don't want to let the players, I'm not going to let them off the hook on this one. No way. They're going to say, well, we rolled bad this one time, and, it came down to like a die roll and all of that. No. Here's the true story of this, okay? They overbuilt. They were going into Giantslayer, right? They put down 133 giants in this adventure path. That's an incredible number to have slain across 6 volumes. And they did it well. They were dropping cloud giants, sometimes like, a couple in a round. That's how fast they were dropping giants. This group was incredibly overbuilt to fight giants. And honestly, I don't know if they could have built a better group to fight giants. But that is not how you go into a Paizo adventure path. You just don't do it. No way. Like Paizo is known for, come on, this is Giantslayer, and they started out with a murder investigation. That's how the whole adventure path opened up. If that didn't tell you right there that you need to start adjusting along the way to be able to handle other threats, they had so much trouble with Iwiga the Hag, who kept coming back over and over because of their will saves. I was trying to, and why I made her a recurring nemesis, and they fought her 3 times in the end. She was in volume 2, and then I was trying to send the message: you guys have to cover up a couple of your glaring weaknesses. You've overbuilt to fight giant. I love unbalanced parties. You can see that in some of our other projects, but in this case, you're so overbuilt. You don't need this much firepower against giants, and they could see that. That in every battle versus a giant, we did fine. It was everything else we struggled with. And their teamwork feats, this is where they also, I think, really sort of continue to overbuild that whole theme, right? Their teamwork feats, which were escape route and swing about. The teamwork feats were built to fight giants. And that's just not, I think in the end, what you needed was something more like what we had in the next project, which was giving bonuses to saving throws to everybody that was close to each other. That would have been useful. The Slayer was charmed. That's you're in trouble. And the Wall of Force, I decided to trap the Blood Rager with me by himself on the near side of the Wall of Force, and then left the rest of the party behind the Wall of Force, and happened to have 2 charmed characters now, right? And letting the 2 charmed characters just go to work on the rest of the party. And Zadim did it for me. I remember him, of this whole path, he had so few rounds in the adventure path where he hit with almost every attack as a Slayer in full attack. And this time he just absolutely sliced and diced Quinn into pieces in a single round. So Zadim dropped Quinn. Olak started working on Jagrin, and they had another, I think it was Ingrahild maybe was in there too, and perhaps even like another one. But they just started to become a huge melee between the party, just a battle royal back there behind the Wall of Force. And the Blood Rager Crow was on the near side with me. Now he's in the room with the wicker baskets, so I can teleport between the baskets. And he had to make some really tight decisions very quickly about how he wanted to handle the encounter. And I made the rest of the room stay completely silent. He was on one side of the Wall of Force, so no one could help this player. No one. That was the rule. And I was like, I'll kick you all out of this room right now if it means doing that, and I'll play this thing one-on-one with them. And you guys can just do your melee behind the wall, since no one was going to get past the Wall of Force anyway. But I was like, do not say a word. Do not help him. Do not help that man. That's our little joke here. So little throw out to Band of Brothers there. But yeah, we definitely didn't watch this guy and felt bad for him. And he had to make these decisions very quickly because it was a Naga that was throwing out huge spells. I was dropping maximized fireballs on him. Up until this point in the adventure path, Crow had never been dropped by straight hit points, especially in a 1v1. He came close against the Fire Giant King, but in general, Crow was just such a beast, and he would go mirror image, displacement, and a bunch of other buffs and just tear through people. And the player for the first time was facing a different strategy. He didn't think I would go 6 rounds in a row of maximized fireball. He didn't think I'd go for hit points. So the choices that he made were to play like, okay, he's going to just, start to fire off other spells on me. I'm going to have to just make good saves. I'm going to play. So he kind of played the long game and went after the baskets and sort of slowly boxed the Naga in as best you could here in the situation. But it's not actually what was probably the most optimal. There's no way to make the perfect decisions there. He's all alone. The pressure was so intense. We knew this was TPK on the line, and it was looking ugly. The whole project, I remember it being hot in the room, even though we pumped the AC so hard for this one. It was in August, and we were just cranking it. It didn't matter. It was so weird. It was like hot in there, and it was at night too. That was the strangest thing. I remember it being like 2 a.m. and everybody was just sitting there watching this thing play out behind the Wall of Force. There was nothing they could do. They watched the campaign come to an end as Crow just could not seem to find a way to stop the Naga from dropping maximize fireball, maximize fireball, maximize fireball. And come on, it's good old Hadouken, I mean, why not just do it over and over? Spam it. And if you got it, play it. Whether it's Magic or D&D, Pathfinder, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Call of Duty, let's go. Drop it. I played it 6 times in a row, maximize fireball, and put down the Blood Rager for the first time. Really, really put him down in a 1v1. And that was it. You ended up with a couple charm characters. Jagrin Grath, he actually ended up escaping into the castle. We like to think he's alive and somewhere in the cloud castle somewhere, but the reality is that Naga was going to find him with those eyes that she has, that she sends around searching. So we just kind of left it there. That was the end. And there was no way, the 2 other uncharmed characters were down. And the project had reached its conclusion. That was it. That was the end of the Giantslayer Endeavor. It was sad. It was sad. They were tough on themselves about it. They were definitely, they didn't want to have to go on the blog and tell everybody about it. And it took actually, I really want to thank the community here, because it took a lot of people bringing up the fact, we went places and talked about it in the months and years to come, bringing up the fact that the TPK is so irrelevant, that the endeavor, the project, was so much larger, that what the definition for success in this thing had nothing to do with whether or not you beat a storm giant at the end of 240 encounters that you'd played before that across 464 hours and 5 minutes. That was the amount of hours of the Giantslayer Endeavor. The actual session hours played 292 hours and 15 minutes in 6 marathons across 6 months. Character deaths, 16 character deaths. It was ugly. It was violent. It was giants. That's what we wanted. And, we did a ton of research going into this thing on what had come before, right? So we wanted to know essentially like what records existed as far as this amount of play, the way that we're documenting this thing, every single encounter. We were creating a PDF that you can find on our Patreon. It's 51,000 words of documentation. It really is every single encounter, photos upon photos of the whole project. And we just included so many things in there. We tracked every giant bag that we opened that all the giants were carrying, every single one of them. We even tracked every single giant we killed, so that was wild too. We just decided to document and over document this entire experience, and had just approached so many people about what had come before. And the way that you in this industry go back and kind of check records, it's really hard to do. Actually, there's not a whole lot there when you want to set records. That's what we found out. Don't even, Guinness, don't get me started, because when it comes to Guinness, we did talk with them quite a bit, and it was really just about money. And, I think it was like $8,000 every couple of days they wanted to sit in. So what, $16,000 a marathon to be able to create a record for the first time, because there wasn't a record that existed for it. We were setting the very first one, and pretty much their reaction, along with a lot of other people, was like, don't set it so high. Like, why are you setting it? If it doesn't exist, wouldn't you want to set the record sort of just like the minimum you had to do to set a record? Like, why overset it? And not even overset it, like obscenely set it. And I don't know, that's how we roll. This is OAD. Come on, that's it. We push the envelope. And so, yeah, we talked to a lot of people, and the best way to really find out what had come before was to just meet some of the big names. We got to sit in a bunch of really cool places, some cool hotel rooms with a lot of big names out there that hooked us up with, hey, there's something that went down in like 83, 84 back in the day at a convention down south. And there are a couple of projects like that went on, which were a good amount of time, especially like back in the 80s, but nothing on this scale, nothing like this. And so that helped us understand exactly where it would sit once it was finished. And it did finish. And we sat around the next morning. We decided to kind of go to bed and sleep on it. It was just one of those things that was too much. It was just too sad. It was sad that it was over. And when we sit around the fire pit now at current marathons, there'll be a whole bunch of newer members there. And you always have a veteran or two, but newer members that will tell stories of past projects, stories of early campaigns, stories of, characters and items and all the things that groups like to do, right? And we do the same thing. And stories of legends come up. And these 4 players, they're legends. They're legends to have done this. And at the end, they did go all their separate ways. That's how it goes. The project ends, and players, one ended up publishing a textbook shortly afterwards, and he, for a major university, he ended up not playing much. He got promoted, and he's still a professor there, and hasn't played much at all since. Another player moved upstate. He got a new career, and sort of by not by choice, I should say, but he started playing only a little bit less every year and so forth, and now I guess he's just sort of like a Jedi in exile up there, waiting to return to active status in the Order. And another guy, he moved away and moved out to Ohio and changed careers, got married, still plays a little bit here and there, but just life moves on, and so it really comes down to just whether or not you can keep going with another project after that, and it's rare. And sometimes yes, like he ended up he played in a couple more projects to come, but that roster wasn't the same. The final player in the core four, I think we all kind of know what happened here, but that was his last project. He decided to take the approach of only explaining half of it to his spouse before he came into this thing, and then dumping the rest of it on her once he was halfway through the project. And she said, "That's fine, but it's your last project. You'll never do another one." And he never did. And that's the story of the core four, the four players who completed this. And as for me, GM, I've been the constant since 1987, and I am the caretaker and the sentinel of the Amber Die. It's my role to protect the die until I can pass it on to the next person who will GM the Order in my stead. And it's also my job to pass on the stories to all who will listen. And so here I sit with my copies of Giantslayer signed by Adam Daigle and Rob McCreary, who were kind enough to gift these to us after the project was over. Both of them moved very far up the ladder at Paizo following this project and other adventure paths to come, of course. And I'm sure you follow Pathfinder and a lot of the Pathfinder media out there, then you'll know their names and their work. And this was really a treat to have the two of them on this adventure path at this point in their career. And it really does, you'll feel it. It really does make a difference when you get a team of developer and senior developer like that. And so now, where are we at? Where does the Giantslayer Endeavor sit? It sits on a throne of its own, because nothing like it, nothing of this magnitude has come before or since in the tabletop gaming industry. And when we get the question, would you do it again? I'll say this once. This is the most hardcore, most committed, actual role-playing group you will find. Don't tempt us.